Mom, was I bad for being hungry? My 9-year-old daughter whispered the question from an urgent care bed while a nurse photographed 6 red marks across her cheek. The paper beneath Lucy crackled whenever she trembled. Antiseptic stung my nose, and I tasted blood where I had bitten my mouth to keep from screaming. Who did this? The nurse asked. My sister, I said. 47 minutes earlier, we had been sitting at my parents' Christmas table. I had not come to beg. My mother had called 3 times that week, insisting Lucy needed a proper family Christmas. Still, when we arrived, every dining chair had a place card, except ours. Mom brought a folding chair from the laundry room for Lucy and wedged it beside me, lower than the others. Vanessa sat across from us beneath a framed photograph from the opening day of Bright Steps, the daycare center she owned. My parents had spent the first half of dinner praising her enrollment numbers and telling relatives how naturally children respected her. Lucy had barely touched her turkey. When the shrimp platter reached our end of the table, she leaned toward me. Can I have one? She whispered. Ask Grandma. She made them. Lucy did. My mother was listening to Vanessa and never answered. A moment later, Mom pushed the platter closer while reaching for the gravy. Lucy took that movement as permission. Lucy reached for one shrimp from the serving platter. Before I could move, Vanessa knocked her hand aside and slapped her 6 times. The first sound silenced the conversation. By the 6th, silverware had begun moving again. My father sliced another piece of ham. My mother folded and refolded the corner of her napkin. An aunt at the far end lifted her water glass without looking at us. You and your mom came here to beg not to eat like family. Lucy began sobbing. No one stood up. Vanessa picked the shrimp from Lucy's plate and dropped it back onto the platter. She needs to learn that taking something without permission has consequences, she said. I manage children every day. Do not tell me how discipline works. You hit her, I said. My voice sounded quiet, which made Vanessa smile. Quiet Aaron was the Aaron my family understood, the one who gathered coats, washed dishes, and apologized later for making everyone uncomfortable. I corrected her, Vanessa replied. My mother lowered her eyes and kept cutting her turkey. My father tapped his spoon against his glass, as if my daughter's crying were the disruption. Aaron, he said, make her apologize to your sister. For 1 second, I was 12 again, waiting for permission to call cruelty by its name. Then Lucy looked at me. I stepped between her and Vanessa. No, Lucy will not apologize for being hit. My father pushed his chair back an inch. If you walk out over this, do not expect us to chase you. I removed the spare key to my parents' house from my key ring and placed it beside his plate. You will not have to. I took my daughter's coat, left every Christmas gift behind, and walked out while my father called after me. She'll come back when she needs us. He was wrong. In the clinic parking lot, I found the card a former employee of Vanessa's daycare had slipped into my purse 6 months earlier. If you ever see how Vanessa treats a child when she thinks everyone will protect her, call me. I dialed. Lila answered on the first ring. Vanessa hit Lucy, I said. There was a pause. Then Lila asked one question that turned a family assault into something much larger. Was it over food? I stared through the windshield at the urgent care sign glowing red against the dark. 1 shrimp, I said. Lucy took 1 shrimp from the platter. Lila let out a breath that sounded more tired than surprised. Do not question Lucy over and over, she said. Write down only what she says on her own. Keep the exact words Vanessa and your father used tonight. Do not post anything online, no matter how angry you are. Her instructions were so specific that my hand tightened around the phone. Why would my father's words matter? Because Vanessa rarely explains herself alone. I looked into the back seat. Lucy sat with her coat, hood pulled over her head, both hands pressed between her knees. She was watching me through the gap between the front seats. How many children? I asked. Take care of your daughter first. Meet me tomorrow at the Bellwood Library, somewhere public. Lila, how many? Not on the phone. The call ended before I could ask anything else. 6 months earlier, at a Bright Steps fundraising breakfast, Lila had pressed that card into my palm while Vanessa posed for photographs beside a banner that read, "Every child deserves a safe place to grow." I had almost thrown it away. Vanessa had told the family Lila was resentful because she had been passed over for a promotion. My parents believed her before Lila ever spoke. So had I. I slipped the card into my wallet and told myself keeping it was not the same as doubting my sister. Now it felt like proof of my own cowardice. "Mom?" Lucy said from behind me. I turned. "I'm here. Are we going inside?" I put the phone away. "Yes." "Will they tell Aunt Vanessa?" "They'll write down what happened. You only have to say what you remember, and you can stop whenever you want." Lucy touched her cheek and winced. "Grandpa said I ruined Christmas." Grandpa was wrong. The words came out before I could soften them. I was glad they did. By the time the nurse finished photographing Lucy's cheek, the marks had begun fading at the edges. That frightened me more than if they had stayed bright. In my work as a liability claims investigator, I had seen how quickly people confused fading evidence with a disappearing event. The nurse handed me an intake form. Under occupation, I wrote, liability claims investigator. Under relationship to patient, I wrote mother. The second answer mattered more. The nurse glanced at the notes she had entered. "You described this as a family discipline incident." "No." She looked up. "I described my sister striking my daughter 6 times. Please use those words." The nurse nodded and corrected the screen without arguing. Dr. Nisha Patel entered a few minutes later. She was calm without being casual. She examined Lucy's cheek, checked her vision, asked whether her jaw hurt, and then pulled her stool low enough that she and Lucy were eye level. "Tell me what happened from the part you remember best," she said. Lucy twisted the cuff of her sweater. "I took a shrimp." Dr. Patel waited. "Aunt Vanessa hit me. Grandpa told Mom to make me say sorry." "What happened next?" "Mom took me away." Dr. Patel did not ask Lucy to count the slaps again. She did not ask whether Vanessa had meant to hurt her. She documented what she could see, explained that the clinic would follow its reporting policy, and gave me information for making my own report. "Keep tonight simple for her," she told me near the door. No repeated questioning. No family confrontation with Lucy present. If she reports worsening pain, dizziness, vision changes, or trouble eating, bring her back. "I understand." Lucy waited until the doctor left before speaking. "Are Grandma and Grandpa going to be mad at you?" I sat beside her on the narrow bed. "They might be." "Because you took me away?" "Because I would not pretend what happened was acceptable." She stared down at the paper bracelet around her wrist. "I thought Grandpa made the rules for you too." That sentence found a place inside me no slap could reach. When I was 12, Vanessa had dug her nails into my arm under the same dining table because I took the last dinner roll. I had cried out and knocked over a glass. My father made me apologize for embarrassing her in front of guests. My mother later brought ice to my room and called that love. I had spent almost 30 years telling myself the important part was that she brought the ice. I took Lucy's hand. "Grandpa does not make the rules for me," I said. "And he does not make them for you." Then why did everybody keep eating? I could have said they were shocked. I could have said they did not understand what they saw. Those would have been familiar lies, polished smooth by years of use. "Because standing up to Aunt Vanessa would have cost them something," I said. "They chose not to pay it." Lucy's fingers tightened around mine. "Did I cost you something?" "You are not a cost." I said it twice so she would hear the difference. On the drive home, my phone vibrated so often inside the cup holder that Lucy asked me to turn it off. I pulled into a gas station, set the family group chat to silent, and checked only long enough to see whether anyone had asked about her. 23 messages. Not one asked whether Lucy was hurt. Vanessa had written, "You humiliated me in my own parents' home." My mother wrote, "Please bring Lucy back so we can finish Christmas peacefully." My father wrote, "A child cannot be allowed to divide a family." Buried between them was a message from my cousin Beth, sent at 6:41. "Running late, save me shrimp." I read it twice. Beth had not been there when Vanessa struck Lucy. At the time, the message meant nothing beyond another guest arriving late. I took a screenshot anyway, then stopped myself. A screenshot could be cropped, disputed, or separated from context. I exported the entire conversation instead. That was habit, not strategy. I had spent 14 years handling claims built from conflicting memories. People remembered what protected them. Documents remembered what had been written. At home, Lucy would not sit at the kitchen table. She ate cereal standing beside the counter, keeping her bowl close to her chest. I did not tell her to sit properly. I did not mention the shrimp. When she was finished, I gave her the choice between sleeping in my room or hers. She chose mine. I left the hallway light on and waited until her breathing steadied before opening my laptop at the foot of the bed. On the back of the clinic instructions, I drew 3 columns. What I knew, how I knew it, what remained unverified. I knew Lucy had been struck because I saw it. I knew Vanessa used her open hand 6 times because I counted the sounds before my body caught up. I knew my father demanded an apology. I knew my mother looked down. I knew Beth was not present because her own message placed her elsewhere 7 minutes later. I did not know what Lila had witnessed at Bright Steps. I did not know whether she had documents. I did not know whether her version would survive scrutiny. I wrote those limits down too. My phone lit again. This time the message came from my father directly. Lucy had become emotional after a brief correction. You escalated the situation by removing her before anyone could calm her down. I read the sentence aloud under my breath. Had became. Brief correction. Not Vanessa hit her. Not even Vanessa lost her temper. My father had taken 6 slaps and converted them into a child's emotional reaction. Vanessa's message arrived seconds later. You know I am a trained childcare professional. If you repeat this outside the family, you could destroy everything I built. Then my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Aaron, sweetheart, nobody is saying Vanessa handled it perfectly. But you know how much pressure she is under. If there are medical bills, your father and I will cover them. Just do not create a record that follows your sister for the rest of her life. Call me before you do anything permanent. I looked at Lucy sleeping beside me. My mother had not offered to pay because Lucy was hurt. She had offered because paper was harder to silence than a granddaughter. I opened the group chat and typed one response. Do not call, message, or visit Lucy. All communication must come through me in writing. I will not discuss withdrawing any report tonight. I reread it once, then pressed send. My mother replied with a crying face. Vanessa wrote, You are using your daughter to punish me. My father's answer came last. Then we will put the family's recollection in writing. For years, that sentence would have frightened me into calling him. My father loved the language of consensus. He could place 4 frightened people behind one polished statement and call it the truth. That night, I added his sentence to my chronology and muted him too. At 10:30, Lila sent the address of the library and a proposed meeting time. No attachments, no photographs, no dramatic promises. Then another message appeared. I have permission from 2 parents to give you their contact information after we meet. Please do not contact them before that. I called her immediately. 2 parents? I whispered, moving into the hallway so I would not wake Lucy. They agreed that I could connect them with another parent if something happened again, Lila said. They did not agree to have their children's records passed around. I need to explain what I have and what I did before you decide whether I am useful to you. The last part caught me. What you did? Tomorrow. You asked if it was over food before I told you anything. Why? Silence stretched across the line. Because Vanessa has rules about children taking what she has not personally handed them, Lila said. And because when she thinks a child is challenging her authority, she stops seeing hunger. She sees disrespect. I leaned against the wall. Were those children hurt? They were punished. What happened afterward is the part you need to understand. Tell me their names. Aaron. I am not asking for records. I am asking whether my daughter is the first child you know Vanessa has treated this way. Lila exhaled. Their names are Noah and Maya, she said. Lucy is the 3rd child I know about. The line stayed open for a second after Lila named Noah and Maya. I could hear paper shifting on her end, followed by a door closing. What happened to them? I asked. Tomorrow, Aaron. Not while your daughter is sleeping 10 feet away. Before I could object, she added, if you want this to hold up outside your house, we have to handle it differently from the way your relatives do. That stopped me. What does that mean? It means we do not decide the conclusion first and make every detail serve it. The call ended with a meeting time and nothing else. Sleep never came. Each time Lucy moved beside me, my body tightened before my mind caught up. Around dawn, she rolled toward the wall and pulled the blanket over her head. The redness on her cheek had faded to a blotchy pink, but she flinched when a strand of hair brushed the skin. Breakfast was cereal again. She stood beside the counter with her bowl cradled against her chest. "You can sit anywhere you want," I said. "I want to stand." "Then stand." Her spoon scraped the bottom of the bowl 3 times. The investigator in me wanted to ask whether Vanessa had said anything before the first slap, whether my father had moved, whether Mom had looked at Lucy even once. Those details might matter later. They did not matter more than the child standing in front of me. "What would make this week feel safer?" I asked. Lucy considered the question. "I don't want to hear their messages." "You won't. And can you tell Mrs. Cooper not to touch my face? She fixes my hair sometimes. I'll tell her you need people to ask first." She nodded and took another bite. Nothing else was asked. On a yellow notepad, I wrote her exact requests, then closed it. A richer statement was not worth teaching Lucy that she had to perform her pain well enough to deserve protection. An email went to her teacher, explaining only what was necessary. Another went to the school counselor, asking for a private check-in after winter break. Before leaving for the library, I put the family voicemail thread behind a passcode and told Lucy she did not have to decide anything about her grandparents that morning. My neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, had already agreed to let Lucy spend 2 hours making cookies with her and her granddaughter. She asked no questions in front of Lucy. That was the only kind of help I could tolerate. At 9:12, Lila sent a message. "I'm bringing both versions." The Bellwood Library was nearly empty. Lila had chosen a table beside the reference desk, visible to the librarian, but far enough away for low voices. 2 paper folders rested in front of her. She kept both hands on them when I sat down. "These are not for you to take," she said. "They contain information about children who are not yours. I made a redacted index so you can understand what exists. The complete records go directly to the licensing reviewer once there is a case number." "Show me the index." Her mouth tightened, perhaps at my tone, but she slid one sheet across the table. The first entry concerned Noah Reed, who had been 4. According to Lila, he arrived without breakfast after his mother's overnight shift ran late. During morning snack, he took a packet of crackers from a second bin after finishing his portion. Vanessa struck his knuckles with a plastic serving spoon, Lila said. Once, he dropped the crackers and started crying. She made him sit apart from the class until lunch. The second entry concerned 5-year-old Maya Green. She had eaten a strawberry set aside for a counting activity. Vanessa pulled her out of the chair by the upper arm and placed her in the hallway, facing the wall. "How long?" I asked. 11 minutes, according to the room log. "Who wrote the original reports?" "I did." "Who witnessed the incidents?" Lila tapped the index. "The staff names are listed for the reviewer. I'm not giving them to you, so nobody can claim you coached them." That answer helped her credibility. It did not erase the question that had been growing since the previous night. Why were neither of these incidents reported properly? Her gaze dropped to the folders. They were recorded. That was not my question. Lila opened the first folder and positioned 2 pages side by side, keeping the names covered with opaque strips. The report on the left described contact with Noah's hand and the serving spoon. The report on the right called it a brief correction following food-related defiance. The sentence about separating him from the class was gone. The same pattern appeared in Maya's documents. The original described the grip on her arm and 11 minutes in the hallway. The replacement said she had been redirected to a quieter area following a brief correction. At the bottom of the replacement, beside the date, were 2 initials, LM. Lila Moreno. "You signed this." Her hands left the folders and settled in her lap. "Yes." "Both of them?" "Yes." The air vent above us clicked on. Warm air stirred the corner of the redacted index while I studied the woman who had warned me about my sister. "Why should I trust records you helped change?" "You shouldn't trust them because of me," Lila said. "You should compare the versions, verify the dates, speak to the parents, And let the agency obtain the center's copies. Who gave you the replacement language? She hesitated long enough for the answer to feel heavier when it came. Your father told me the original wording could close the center. Those are my initials. I signed after Robert told me the original wording would close the center. My phone vibrated before I could ask how my father had become involved in a daycare incident report. The message was from Monica Reed. Lila said you may want to speak. I can meet for 20 minutes. Noah will not be present. Monica chose a coffee shop across from the bus station. She arrived in navy scrubs, carrying an envelope with one hand and checking the time with the other. My shift starts in 40 minutes, she said, so ask what matters. Instead of telling her what Lila had said, I asked her to show me what she had kept. The envelope contained a printed email, a tuition receipt, and a photograph of an incident form. Monica had taken the photograph at the front desk before signing that she received it. The wording matched the original version Lila had shown me. The next morning, they gave me a different form, Monica said. Vanessa told me the first one had been written by an employee who was too emotional. Did she name Lila? Not then. Later, yes. Monica pushed the printed email toward me. A 2-week courtesy tuition credit had been offered if she considered the matter resolved and removed Noah from Bright Steps without further complaint. The sender was not Vanessa. It came from the bookkeeping account my mother used at the center. The signature read Diane Hale, Family Accounts Support. Did my mother speak to you? Once, Monica said. She told me a refund would help me find another program faster. She was right. I could not miss work while waiting for somebody to believe a 4-year-old. Shame crossed Monica's face when she said she had taken the credit. I recognized the expression because my relatives had trained me to feel it whenever survival looked insufficiently noble. Taking back tuition did not make the report false, I said. It made it easier for them to say I left satisfied. There was no argument for that. Will you send these directly to the licensing reviewer if one contacts you? Maybe. The answer was honest. What would you need? To know my son will not become a story people pass around. To know you are not doing this because you hate your sister. And to know Lila is not arranging all of us so she can save herself. No promise could guarantee the outcome Monica wanted. Offering one would only make me sound like Vanessa. I can keep Noah's identity out of anything public that comes from me, I said. I can document your conditions and let you speak for yourself. I cannot promise what an agency will decide, and I cannot promise Lila has no selfish reason for coming forward. Monica watched me fold my hands instead of reaching for her envelope. That is the first useful answer anybody has given me, she said. She took the documents when she left. Their absence from my hands mattered. Monica had shown me a source. She had not surrendered ownership of it. The next stop was my parents' house. Lucy's allergy medication and school backpack were still in the guest room. Mom had placed both inside the entryway, but Vanessa opened the door before I could ring twice. She blocked the gap with one shoulder. You could have sent someone, she said. Move away from Lucy's belongings. Dad appeared behind her. Mom stood farther back, holding a white envelope. Vanessa handed me the backpack but kept the medication in her other hand. Those were corrective taps. You know I would never harm a child. Give me the medication. Say you understand what actually happened. Dad said her name once, not as a warning but as a signal to change tactics. Vanessa tossed the bottle into the backpack. Once you trigger a corrective action review, you do not control where it ends, he told me. Employees get questioned. Parents panic. Innocent people lose jobs. The phrase caught against everything else. No complaint had been filed against Bright Steps. Nobody in my family had been told I was considering a licensing review. Who said anything about corrective action? I asked. Dad's expression did not change. I worked in education for 30 years. I understand what reckless allegations do. Mom stepped forward with the envelope. This covers the clinic and more. We can replace Lucy's Christmas gifts too. Bring her by this weekend, and we will explain that everyone made mistakes. The flap was unsealed. A check was visible inside. What mistake did Lucy make? Mom pressed the envelope closed. That is not what I meant. Then write down what you meant. Vanessa laughed without humor. There she is. Erin, the claims investigator, building a case because her feelings got hurt. My feelings are not the allegation. The backpack went over my shoulder. The medicine bottle rattled inside. Do not send money. Do not contact Lucy. Any further conversation happens in writing or at a neutral location. Dad took a step toward the threshold. If you leave now, do not expect your mother and me to keep pretending you have not chosen strangers over your own relatives. I chose the child who was hit while you kept eating. No one followed me to the car. From my kitchen, I sent a short email summarizing the exchange. Vanessa described the contact as corrective taps. Dad referred to a corrective action review. Mom offered payment and gifts if Lucy returned. The last line invited each of them to correct any factual error in writing. Vanessa replied that my email was harassment. Dad said I was threatening them with professional language. Mom asked why everything had to become a record. None of them corrected a single fact. Beneath the email entry in my chronology, I typed one question. How did Dad know the review term? Lila agreed to a second meeting only after I told her Monica had shown me the refund email. This time we spoke in my parked car outside the library, where neither of us could hide behind a folder. Start with your initials, I said. Not Vanessa. Not my father. You. She rubbed her palms against her coat. I signed the rewritten NOAA report because I was afraid of losing my job. Robert drafted the replacement language. Vanessa told me to use it. I told myself the facts still existed in the original. Where was the original? In a supervisor file Vanessa controlled. So you knew parents and regulators might see only the replacement. Yes. The admission did more for her credibility than any excuse could have. After Maya's incident, Lila had photographed both versions, sent a dated objection to her personal email, and refused to sign another replacement. When Bright Steps failed to make the required external notification, she resigned. Why wait until Lucy? I asked. I did not wait. I contacted 2 parents. I tried to report without enough documentation, and Vanessa said I was a disgruntled employee. Your father said the records proved I had approved the corrections. That account still required verification. I wrote it down as a claim, not a fact. If we proceed, I said, you speak only to what you saw and did. You tell the reviewer you signed the altered reports before you explain who pressured you. You send the complete files directly to the agency. No contact with Lucy. No social media. No, asking me to defend your choices. Lila held my gaze. Agreed. And if the records contradict you, I will not protect you. They will not. That confidence was hers to prove. Before leaving, she showed me one final redacted line from each replacement report. Both contained the same sentence Dad had used on Christmas night. The child had become emotional after a brief correction. By evening, the complaint form was open on my laptop. Lucy's incident appeared first, clearly labeled as the event that prompted my concern, not proof of what happened inside Bright Steps. Noah's and Maya's incidents were listed as matters requiring independent verification. Monica's documents remained with Monica. Lila's files were marked for direct submission after a case number was assigned. Every sentence that began with "I believe" was reviewed. Where a source existed, I named it. Where one did not, the sentence was removed. The family could call that disloyalty. A reviewer would see restraint. My cursor hovered over the submit button. Pressing it meant no private apology could put the story back inside my parents' dining room. It also meant Vanessa could no longer decide which version deserved to exist. From the bedroom, Lucy laughed at something playing on her tablet. The sound made the choice simple. I pressed submit. A confirmation number appeared. I forwarded it to Lila and sent Monica a message telling her the agency might contact her, with no pressure to participate. Then I completed the separate local report regarding what Vanessa had done to Lucy. 10 minutes later, a message arrived from an unfamiliar number. This is Tasha Green, Maya's mother. Lila said you filed. Another message appeared before I could answer. Before I send anything, you should know your mother paid us too. Tasha's second message sat on the screen until the words stopped looking like a sentence. Your mother paid us too. My reply contained only a question. Would you be willing to meet somewhere you choose? She selected a bakery near Maya's new elementary school and asked me not to bring Lila. 2 afternoons later, Tasha arrived, carrying a slim laptop case. She ordered tea, chose the table farthest from the counter, and waited until the server walked away before unzipping the case. "I accepted the money," she said. "That needs to come from me before you see anything." "How much?" 2 weeks of tuition. "Did you agree that the incident had not happened?" "No. I agreed to withdraw Maya and consider the account settled." The distinction mattered. So did the shame in the way she kept rubbing her thumb along the zipper. "Taking a refund to move your daughter did not rewrite the report," I said. "No, but it gave them a reason to describe me as satisfied." Her screen turned toward me. The first report said Vanessa had gripped Maya's arm, lifted her from the chair, and placed her in the hallway after she ate a strawberry reserved for a classroom activity. The revised version removed the grip, the hallway, and the 11-minute room log. In their place was the sentence I had already seen twice. The child had become emotional after a brief correction. The same grammatical mistake appeared in Dad's Christmas message. The same phrase appeared in Noah's altered report. 3 uses did not prove authorship, but coincidence had begun demanding more imagination than coordination. "Who sent you the replacement?" I asked. "Vanessa's office account. Your mother sent the refund email separately." Tasha opened that message next. Diane had written that the tuition credit would be released if Tasha treated the matter as resolved and arranged different care for Maya. The wording was polite, almost maternal. It made a child's punishment sound like a customer service inconvenience. "People will say I took hush money," Tasha said. "Some might." Her eyes lifted sharply. "I will not," I continued. "The payment does not prove you lied. Your report, the 2 versions, and the account terms need to be considered separately." Tasha stared through the bakery window, toward the school entrance. "For almost a month, Maya would not eat strawberries. She told me they belonged to teachers. When I asked Bright Steps about it, Vanessa said children invent rules when parents question discipline at home." Her statement went into my notes as something she had been told, not as proof of why Maya avoided the fruit. Language could move responsibility, 1 sentence at a time. No promise was made about what the agency would decide. Tasha agreed only to forward her documents directly when Dana contacted her. Before closing the revised report, she clicked the File Information panel. At the bottom of the Properties field was a label. Template, RH3. "Does that mean anything to you?" Tasha asked. "Not yet." The letters could have meant Robert Hale. They could also have meant something completely unrelated. My chronology received the label under Unverified, not under Conclusion. That restraint became harder at home. The dining table held my personal laptop, the clinic summary, a printed copy of Dad's Christmas message, and a handwritten source list. Nothing came from my employer. No company database had been searched. No work email had been used. Each document was marked with where it came from and who still possessed the original. 3 columns ran across the screen. What I knew, how I knew it, what remained unproven. The repeated sentence belonged in the second column only as an observed pattern. Dad's involvement in the center belonged in the third. Mom's 2 refund offers were facts. Her reason for making them was not. Lucy came into the room wearing pajamas and stopped when she saw the papers. Every page turned face down before she reached the table. "Are those about Aunt Vanessa?" she asked. "Some of them are about adult decisions. None of them are your job." She climbed onto the chair beside me but tucked 1 foot underneath herself, ready to move. "Grandma still hasn't called." The blocked call log held 3 attempts from Mom and none to the email address I had designated for written contact. Saying Mom did not care would have been a conclusion I could not prove. Saying she was simply busy would have taught Lucy to excuse another choice. "Your grandparents are choosing not to follow the safety rule," I said. "The rule is that they speak to me in writing and do not ask you to fix what happened." "Do they know the rule?" "Yes." "Then they're breaking it on purpose." No answer improved on hers. Lucy asked to watch a movie in my room. After she left, the Christmas group chat was exported again. Beth's message appeared at 6:41 that evening. "Running late, save me shrimp." 7 minutes earlier, I had photographed the marks on Lucy's face in the car. Beth's timing still seemed like background, but it received a place in the chronology. The phone rang before I finished. Marianne Cole's name appeared on the screen. My manager never called after business hours unless a claim had become urgent. Aaron, she said when I answered, someone filed an ethics complaint alleging that you used company authority and investigative resources to target Bright Steps Learning Center. The next morning, Marianne placed a printed complaint between us in her office. The sender identified himself only as a concerned relative of the center's owner. He claimed I had threatened witnesses with my professional position and accessed confidential childcare information through work. Did you? Marianne asked. No. Walk me through what you did use. My personal laptop access log, phone records, disclosure, email, and chronology source list went onto her desk. Monica and Tasha still held their documents. Lila had agreed to deliver protected records directly to the agency. The only medical information in my possession belonged to my own daughter. I did not use our systems, our letterhead, my company email, or any employee as a source, I said. Run the access audit. Do not take my word for it. Marianne studied the source list. You prepared this before the complaint arrived? I started it Christmas night. That helps. It does not end the review. It shouldn't. Until the audit was complete, she removed me from overtime assignments involving childcare providers and placed the conflict disclosure in my personnel file. The decision reduced my next paycheck and left a mark I had never carried in 14 years. This is not discipline, Marianne said. It is separation while we verify the complaint. I understand. Do you? The loss of overtime meant postponing Lucy's summer program payment. Anger pressed against my ribs, searching for someone in the room to blame. Understanding does not mean I like it, I said. It means I will not ask you to create a special rule because the subject is my sister. Asking her to trust my character would have contradicted everything I was demanding from other people. So I signed the acknowledgement and kept my argument inside the documents. Dad's message arrived as I stepped out of the building. You see what happens when you make private matters professional. The timing did not identify the complaint's sender. It did tell me he knew about it before I had mentioned it to anyone outside work. His message went into the chronology, without a reply. Dana Brooks met me 3 days later in a small county office with gray chairs and no promises on the walls. She read the one-page summary first, then turned to the source index. I need to be clear, she said. An incident at a private Christmas dinner does not, by itself, establish what happened inside a licensed center. Agreed. And 2 parents receiving refunds does not automatically establish that anyone purchased their silence. Agreed. Her pen paused. Most complainants argue with those limits. Limits keep weak claims from contaminating strong ones. Dana asked who possessed each original, whether the parents had consented to contact, and why Lila had signed the replacement reports. Nothing about Lila's role was softened. Her fear, her signature, her objection email, and her resignation were listed as separate facts requiring verification. When Dana reached the repeated sentence, she read it aloud once. Where does this appear? Dad's message after Christmas, Noah's revised report, and Maya's revised report. Who wrote it first? I cannot prove who wrote it. I can show where it appears. The file label came next. What is RH3? Dana asked. Unknown. My father's name is Robert Hale, but the initials alone do not establish that he created the template. Did he hold any formal role at Bright Steps? Not that I know. He was a school administrator before retirement. Lila says he supplied replacement language. That is her account, not something I witnessed. Dana closed the index. The agency would obtain the center records itself, contact the parents directly, and conduct separate interviews. No prediction followed. No assurance that Vanessa would be removed. The process might substantiate everything, part of it, or nothing. She asked whether I wanted to limit the complaint to what happened to Lucy. Doing so would be cleaner and faster, but it would leave the center incidents as unconnected stories controlled by whoever spoke most confidently. Keep all 3 entries, I said. Label the Bright Steps incidents for independent verification. If they do not hold up, say so. That choice gave the agency permission to test the entire pattern, including every weakness in my sources. It also kept Lucy's medical record from being used to prove events it could not prove. Giving up control felt like placing Lucy's safety on a table and stepping away. Still, a conclusion controlled by me would be no more trustworthy than one controlled by Vanessa. Permission was given for Dana to contact every listed source, including Lila, about the reports she had signed. As I stood to leave, Dana tapped the line, recording Dad's porch statement. "Why did your father know the phrase corrective action before this complaint existed?" "I don't know," I said. "That is why I included the question." Mom requested a meeting that evening. She chose a diner near the highway and arrived before me, seated in a booth with a cup of tea cooling between her hands. An envelope rested beside the sugar dispenser. Not the same envelope from the porch, but close enough to make my shoulders tighten. "There's no check," she said when she noticed me looking at it. "Just the clinic receipt you left at our house." The receipt had never been at their house. "Where did you get it?" "Vanessa printed the copy you emailed with your summary." The email did not include the receipt. Mom moved the envelope toward herself. "This is exactly what your father means. Every conversation becomes an interrogation. Then answer one question without changing the subject. Why did Dad write incident language for Bright Steps?" Her fingers tightened around the teacup. "He helped Vanessa make things sound professional. That is all." The admission landed quietly. Dad had not merely defended Vanessa after Christmas. He had participated before Lucy ever reached for the shrimp. How often did he help? Mom unfolded a paper napkin and smoothed it across her knees. After the first difficult parent, Vanessa sent him anything that might be misunderstood. He knew what administrators looked for. Not one isolated favor, then. A routine. Dad supplied the language, Vanessa used it, and Mom handled the refunds when words were not enough. Did he write the brief correction sentence? "Your father has always been good with official wording." That was not an answer. He was protecting Vanessa from people who hear one emotional story and decide she should lose everything. What was being protected when you sent the refunds? Mom looked toward the window. Those mothers needed help moving their children. I made that possible. Why weren't the payments recorded with the incident reviews? Because not everything has to become a disciplinary matter. Who decided that? Mom's gaze returned to me. We all did what kept the center open. The word we stripped away the last excuse I had been preserving for her. She had not merely looked down while other people chose. She had counted herself among them. Why did your email require them to consider the accounts resolved? The spoon struck the side of her cup. Your father's blood pressure has been dangerous all week. Vanessa may lose the work she built. Do you understand what you are doing to them? For most of my life, Mom's distress had been an assignment. Find the right sentence. Make Dad less angry. Give Vanessa the apology she needed. Restore the room. That reflex rose now. My hand nearly reached for hers. Instead, it closed around the strap of my purse. "I understand what they are asking me to stop," I said. "That is not the same as causing what the agency may find. If you pause the complaint, we can work this out privately. Your father and I can still be grandparents to Lucy. Access to my daughter is not payment for my silence." Mom's eyes filled, but the old work no longer belonged to me. The envelope stayed on the table when I stood. "I will not withdraw the complaint," I said. "Any future request involving Lucy must be in writing." She followed me as far as the register. "Your father is writing something everyone can live with," she called after me. The document arrived the following afternoon. Dad posted it in the Christmas group chat under the title, Joint Family Recollection. His message instructed everyone who had attended dinner to read the attached account and reply with one word, agreed. He said separate descriptions would only create confusion when the licensing agency began contacting people. The draft stated that Lucy had taken food after being told not to, that Vanessa used a brief correction without intent to harm, and that the child had become emotional after a brief correction. It described me as removing Lucy before anyone could evaluate her condition. Then I reached the witness list. Beth's name appeared beneath the statement, present for the full exchange, and able to confirm the account above. Her message from 641 remained in the exported chat. "Running late, save me shrimp." Dad had not simply polished memory. He had placed an absent person inside the room. One relative replied, agreed within 3 minutes. Another added a thumbs up. Beth's typing indicator appeared, vanished, then appeared again without a message. Vanessa wrote directly beneath the document. If Aaron agrees, Mom and Dad are willing to put this behind us and continue their relationship with Lucy. If she refuses, she is choosing to keep a child from her grandparents. There it was again, belonging offered in exchange for surrender. My finger hovered over the reply field. One word could restore holiday invitations, birthday calls, and the appearance that Lucy still had grandparents. The price was teaching her that truth became negotiable when enough adults preferred the lie. No argument went into the chat. The complete thread was exported with dates, names, the attachment, and Beth's earlier message. A read-only copy went into my records. Another went to Dana with a single sentence. This document was distributed before individual interviews. Dad's message still offered two visible choices: agree or lose us. I clicked export, not agree. The next morning, Lucy ate scrambled eggs on the stool beside the kitchen counter. Her feet rested on the lower rung instead of dangling beneath a table chosen by someone else. She had picked the seat without asking, and I treated that small decision with the respect it deserved. Does telling the truth mean I never see Grandma again? She asked. The spatula stopped halfway to the sink. An easy answer waited. Grandma loves you. Everything will settle down. Adults say awful things when they are upset. Each promise would have softened breakfast and made the future someone else's problem. I don't know, I said. We may lose people if they choose the lie. Lucy pressed the side of her fork into a piece of egg. Even Grandma? Even Grandma. Her face folded for a moment, then steadied. No crying came. Somehow that hurt more. Did I make her choose? Lucy asked. No. Grandma is responsible for Grandma's choices. You are responsible for telling me when you feel unsafe. Can the rule change? The refrigerator motor clicked off, leaving the kitchen quiet enough for me to hear her fork touch the plate. It can change if their behavior changes, I said. Not because enough time passes. Not because a holiday comes. They would have to show us they understand what they did. That answer did not brighten her face, but it took the burden off it. Her shoulders lowered a little. I sat on the stool beside her. We need a rule for any grown-up who wants to see you. They have to say what happened without blaming you. They cannot ask you to apologize for taking food, and they cannot carry messages from Aunt Vanessa. You never have to speak to her. What if Grandpa says I was bad? Then the visit ends. What if Grandma says she misses me? Missing you is not the same as making you safe. Lucy looked down at her plate. What if Grandma tells one true thing? The question followed me after I took her to school. At home, the dining table became a work surface. 4 sections went into the packet: a chronology, a source map, the joint recollection with its distribution history, and a list of questions the agency could verify without trusting me. Every page received a number. Original files stayed untouched on an encrypted personal drive, with a second backup stored separately. Printed copies went into a plain folder, not one bearing my employer's name. The source map identified Lila's reports without attaching confidential copies. Monica's and Tasha's records remained in their possession unless they sent them directly to Dana. The source map forced every claim into 3 plain columns: what I knew, how I knew it, and what remained unproven. Lucy's account came from what she had told me and the clinician. The dinner came from what I had witnessed. The center incidents belonged to reports, logs, parents, and Lila, not to my memory. Keeping those borders visible prevented outrage from impersonating knowledge. Anger kept trying to become a sentence. Dad made everyone lie. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before deleting it. In its place, I wrote. The draft was distributed before independent accounts were collected. Beth's contemporaneous message conflicts with the draft's witness list. The difference felt bloodless. It was also defensible. At 6:34 on Christmas evening, my phone had recorded the first photograph of Lucy's cheek in the car. At 6:41, Beth wrote that she was running late and asked someone to save her shrimp. Urgent care began Lucy's intake at 7:14. Whatever time anyone assigned to the argument, Beth could not have watched an exchange that ended before the first photograph existed. The misspelled sentence appeared beside each source, but I did not label Dad as its author. The file name RH3 appeared exactly as preserved, without expanding the initials into Robert Hale. A possible explanation was not proof. One detail was removed even though it helped me. I could not establish that Dad had filed the complaint at my job. His message showed prior knowledge, not authorship. The packet became thinner by one accusation and stronger by one honest limit. Lila answered my source confirmation email shortly after noon. Dana received both versions directly from me. I will speak with her alone, and I will not minimize the fact that I signed the replacements. She added that I should not forward either child's report back to her or contact the parents about what to say. I replied that all future evidence should travel directly from its source to Dana. Her warning did not give me a new fact. It protected the independence of the facts we already had. Before I could file her response, another email arrived. Vanessa offered to pay every dollar of Lucy's counseling costs if I signed a statement saying the Christmas incident was a private domestic disagreement unrelated to Bright Steps. She requested an answer in person. The coffee shop she chose sat halfway between our homes, busy enough to discourage a scene. Vanessa arrived in a camel coat and placed her phone face up beside her untouched drink. No hug was attempted. That was the first honest thing about the meeting. I regret the way Lucy experienced Christmas, she said. I never wanted her to feel unwelcome. Did you slap her? Her mouth tightened. We are not going to reduce an entire relationship to an emotional accusation. 6 strikes are not a relationship. That is your description. 6 is Lucy's count and mine. The urgent care record documents the marks. What are you apologizing for? Vanessa pushed a printed agreement across the table. The top paragraph offered counseling payments. The next said Mom and Dad could resume supervised visits once I withdrew any claim that the dinner reflected practices at the center. The amount listed would have covered months of appointments. Summer camp no longer fit comfortably inside my budget after losing overtime. For several seconds, the paper looked less like a bribe than relief. Then I remembered Diane's tuition credits and the phrase, "Consider the account resolved." What will change at Bright Steps? I asked. Nothing needs to change at Bright Steps. This did not happen there. 2 original reports described children being punished over food. Both were replaced. Why? Lila was overwhelmed and wrote emotional drafts. Why do the replacements use Dad's sentence? Vanessa leaned back. Because Dad told everyone to keep descriptions consistent. That is what responsible people do when someone is trying to twist words. Her phone lit with Dad's name. He can explain it better, she said, reaching for the screen. Do not add him to this call. You are afraid to hear another account. I have his account. He sent it to the entire group and instructed them to agree. The call went unanswered. Vanessa's hand remained around the phone. Mom and Dad are devastated, she said. You can take the counseling money, let them see Lucy, and stop punishing everyone. At Christmas, you said we came to beg. Now you are offering money if I sign the words you chose. You needed help then, and you need help now. Counseling is help when it is given for Lucy. This agreement makes it payment for my silence. Vanessa's gaze dropped to the paper. You are determined to make everything ugly. The sentence reached for the oldest fear in me, that refusing humiliation was worse than the humiliation itself. My hand rested over the signature line without touching it. Paying for counseling myself would mean tighter groceries, fewer extras, and no easy recovery of the overtime I had lost. The cost was real. So was the lesson Lucy would learn if Vanessa paid to rename what she had done. The apology does not name what you did. The money requires me to change what I reported. Grandparent access requires me to surrender a safety boundary. My answer is no. I slid the agreement back and left enough cash for my coffee. From the parking lot, I sent a short recap. It stated that Vanessa had offered conditional counseling funds, denied any need for changes at Bright Steps, and said Dad had instructed witnesses to keep their descriptions consistent. I asked her to correct anything inaccurate. Her response arrived before I started the engine. Dad only helped witnesses remember accurately. You are deliberately making normal guidance sound improper. That reply went into the packet as her correction. An hour later, Dana asked me to bring the original group export to a follow-up meeting the next morning. A records clerk sat beside her at the county office and entered the date, time, and names before anyone discussed substance. The export remained on my personal drive while the clerk created the agency's copy. Dana compared its attachment data with the printed joint recollection, then opened a yellow folder. Before speaking, I identified the one place where the chain was imperfect. Lila had connected me to Tasha. Dana noted it. Tasha's documents had still gone from Tasha to the agency, and no draft account had circulated between us. Hiding the contact would have handed Vanessa an easy way to discredit everything later. Several accounts submitted separately repeat the same sentence, she said. I cannot tell you who said what outside the scope of this review. I understand. Similar wording does not automatically prove the accounts are false. No. But it tests whether they were independent. The 4 relevant pages went onto the table: Dad's group draft, Beth's late arrival message, and the revised reports for Noah and Maya. The phrase was highlighted once on each document. Nothing else was marked. If everyone remembered independently, I asked, why did every account use had became emotional the same error in Robert's draft? Dana's expression did not change. What do you want the agency to infer from that? Nothing without checking. Ask each person where the sentence came from. Compare their answer with the report versions, edit dates, room logs, and refund records. If they arrived at it independently, the records should support that. The request could damage my complaint. Someone might produce a legitimate shared template. A timestamp might contradict Lila. One parent might withdraw cooperation. By offering a test instead of a conclusion, I was opening the door to answers I would not control. That was the point. Dana closed the packet. We already asked them where that sentence came from. She returned after a short break with a preliminary summary, not the interview files. The agency had received both versions of the 2 incident reports directly from Lila. Monica and Tasha had separately confirmed their own emails and account records. Bright Steps had produced attendance logs, document histories, and tuition credit entries in response to the review. No single record proved the whole pattern. Together, their dates aligned. The original reports existed before the replacements. Descriptions of physical handling and isolation disappeared during revision. Credits followed the parents' objections and withdrawals. The altered documents carried the recurring sentence. Why should we rely on Lila? Dana asked. She signed records she now says were misleading. You should not rely on her as a person who cannot be wrong, I said. Test each document. She identified her signatures, provided both versions, and admitted what she changed. If the center's own history matches those files, they stand without making her flawless. And if one part does not match, then reject that part. Dana asked the same question about Monica and Tasha. They had both accepted credits and withdrawn their children. I explained that their decisions might affect how the agency weighed their memories, but the dated emails and account entries did not depend on whether anyone admired those decisions. The records could be compared with the center's own files. The answer cost me the comfort of a spotless witness. Lila had failed those parents before she helped them. Pretending otherwise would have made our evidence resemble Dad's recollection, smooth, unanimous, and arranged to protect the desired ending. Dana turned to the last page of her summary. The individual responsible for bookkeeping initially stated that she did not know why the tuition credits were issued. Mom had handled the center's books from Vanessa's opening month. Dana did not need to say her name. In a follow-up response, Dana continued, that person stated the center owner directed the credits after parent complaints and that a retired administrator supplied language for revised incident descriptions. For one breath, the room seemed to narrow around the paper. Mom had changed her account. Not for Lucy, not for me. No evidence suggested a sudden awakening. She had stepped outside the joint version, when remaining inside it threatened her own position. Still, the truth did not become less true, because self-preservation had released it. Lucy's question returned. What if Grandma tells one true thing? Please separate the conduct in your findings, I said. Who handled each child? Who directed the report changes? Who supplied the wording? Who issued the credits? One person telling the truth now should not transfer her responsibility to someone else. Dana made a note. The temporary decision will be issued before close of business. The email arrived at 4:48. Bright Steps was temporarily suspended while the agency completed a corrective plan. The preliminary findings cited corroborated concerns in incident handling, record accuracy, and candor during the review. The Christmas assault was listed as relevant context for risk assessment, not as the sole basis for the action. Reopening would require an independent qualified operator. Vanessa could not provide direct care to children or administer incident records during the plan. Monitoring costs would be borne by the center. She had not lost everything. The building still belonged to her. The final process was not complete. But ownership no longer meant she could define safety, rewrite a report, and remain the person in charge of reviewing herself. Monica forwarded the notice Bright Steps sent to parents. It acknowledged the temporary closure and said several enrollments had already been withdrawn. I did not post the agency letter, send it to relatives, or celebrate the losses of employees who had not made Vanessa's choices. The muted Christmas chat supplied the rest. Vanessa accused Mom of turning against her. A cousin asked Dad whether he had written the witness statement and the center reports. Dad answered that outsiders were misinterpreting ordinary help. This time, no row of relatives replied. Agreed. Lucy sat on her chosen stool while I read the part she needed to know. The rules changed, I said. Aunt Vanessa cannot be in charge of children right now. Because I told? Because adults made unsafe choices and people checked the records. You did not close anything. You told the truth about what happened to you. Will she know I made them check? She may blame you. That does not make the blame yours. Do I have to talk to Grandma if she calls? No. The rule we made this morning still applies tonight. She considered that, then reached for an apple slice without asking permission. Mom's voicemail appeared while we cleared the dishes. Erin, I told them the truth. That should count for something. The callback button waited beneath her name. What she disclosed mattered to the children, to the records, and to the decision that removed Vanessa's control. It counted as evidence. It counted as one breach in a wall they had built together. It just did not buy her way back. I did not press the callback button. 3 weeks passed before Dana called with the final decision. Bright Steps could reopen, but not under the structure Vanessa had built. An independent director, with the required credentials, would control daily operations, discipline, staff supervision, and incident reporting. The center would undergo scheduled record reviews and unannounced compliance checks. Everyone working with children had to complete new training before returning. Vanessa could retain a financial ownership interest. She could not provide direct care, discipline a child, supervise employees, alter incident records, or serve as the center's representative during the corrective period. The approved plan also removed Dad from any advisory role and transferred Mom's bookkeeping duties to an outside service. This is not a permanent revocation, Dana said. Continued operation depends on compliance with every condition. For one unbecoming second, disappointment moved through me. Vanessa had struck my daughter, erased details from other children's reports, and tried to buy my withdrawal. Some part of me wanted a locked building and a sign that said she had lost everything. Then I pictured the teachers whose names never appeared in the records, the parents who needed dependable care, and the children who deserved a center safer than the one Vanessa had controlled. Justice did not become weak because it stopped at what could be proved. Will the monitoring reports be reviewed independently? I asked. Yes. The new director reports directly to the agency during the plan. Then I have no objection. The public order showed that enrollment had fallen and that Bright Steps would pay the monitoring costs. Vanessa's management salary disappeared from the reopening budget. Her name remained on the ownership filing, but not on the door to the classrooms. Nothing in the decision restored what Lucy had lost. It did something narrower and more useful. It ended Vanessa's power to punish a child and then control the record of the punishment. That evening, Lucy asked whether Bright Steps was gone. No, I said. It will have a new person in charge and stronger rules. So Aunt Vanessa didn't lose everything? No, Lucy considered my answer. But she can't be mean to kids there? She is not allowed to be in charge of them. That seemed sufficient to her. I tried to let it be sufficient to me. Dad's email arrived before bedtime. He requested one final meeting to save the family. The room he reserved at the community center held 6 chairs, a folding table, and a wall clock loud enough to mark every second nobody spoke. Daylight came through the narrow windows. I had driven myself and sent Lila the address and the time I expected to leave. Her only job was to notice if I did not check in. Vanessa sat beside Dad with the final order face down between them. Mom's chair remained empty. "You took my career," Vanessa said before I had removed my coat. "The agency restricted your role after reviewing the records. Records you dug up because you wanted revenge. Records created at your center." Dad lifted one hand. The old signal for both daughters to stop speaking worked on neither of us. "We are not relitigating Christmas," he said. "One grammatical error has been inflated into an attack on this entire family." "The error was a clue," I said. "The original reports, edit histories, attendance logs, refunds, witness timing, and coordinated statement established the rest. You enjoyed proving your father wrong." "No, I needed reviewers to test whether you were wrong." The door opened behind me. Mom entered, murmured an apology for being late, and took the chair farthest from Vanessa. "Everyone needs to acknowledge their part," she said. Vanessa turned on her. "Your part was changing your story when they pressured you." "My part was issuing the credits," Mom replied. "I told them that. After you blamed me, their argument reached for me like a rope, each side expecting me to pull. Instead, I placed my copy of the decision on the table. "This lists the parts," I said. Vanessa handled children and directed the report changes. Dad supplied language and coordinated witness accounts. Mom issued credits and first denied knowing why. All three of you distributed a version that placed Beth in a room she had not entered yet. Dad struck the table with 2 fingers. "And what is your part?" "I documented what happened, reported it, and refused to sign something untrue." "You exposed private matters to strangers." "The center was licensed to care for other people's children. Its records were not a private dinner dispute." Vanessa leaned forward. "If you had agreed, none of them would have looked further." The clock clicked once. She had intended the sentence as an accusation. What reached me was the same belief she had carried since Christmas. The truth mattered only if I refused to surrender it. "That is why I could not agree," I said. Dad pushed his chair back. "So you came here to gloat?" "I came to state the boundary once. Vanessa will have no contact with Lucy. Do not send messages through relatives, mail gifts, approach her at school, or ask Mom and Dad to speak for you." "You cannot erase me as her aunt," Vanessa said. "I can decide who has access to my child." Dad pointed toward the door. "Walk out now, and you are the one abandoning this family." My coat went back over my shoulders. That word does not turn a threat into love. No one followed until I reached the parking lot. Mom caught up beside my car, one hand pressed against the door before I could open it. "I was the one who finally told the truth," she said. "Yes, you were." Relief crossed her face too quickly. "Then you understand why I should be allowed to see Lucy." The wish to embrace her arrived with such force that my arms ached. This was still my mother. She had bandaged, scraped knees, sewn costumes the night before school plays, and once sat awake beside my bed through a fever. Those memories had not vanished. They simply could not answer for Christmas. "Did you tell them because Lucy was hurt?" I asked. "Or because the refund emails had your name?" Mom removed her hand from the car. "Both things can be true." "They can." "Then how long are you going to punish me?" "A boundary is not a sentence with an end date. I am her grandmother. You watched Vanessa hit her. You asked me to keep the center open. You told reviewers you did not know why you paid those parents until the records put your name beside the credits." Mom's chin trembled. "I corrected it. Your correction counted in the decision. It does not make you safe for Lucy today." "What do you want from me?" There had been a time when that question would have made me write her apology for her. "If you ever want me to consider contact, write to me directly. Name what happened without calling it a misunderstanding. Do not blame Lucy, me, the agency, or Vanessa. Do not use relatives to pressure us. Then show through your behavior that you can respect an answer you do not like. For how long? There is no promised date." "And your father?" "The same conditions. Vanessa has no contact." Mom stared at me as though I had withheld something she already owned. Then she walked back toward the building, without saying goodbye. Inside the car, both hands stayed on the steering wheel until her shape disappeared through the doors. The first sob bent me forward. More followed, rough and embarrassing, fogging the windshield while shoppers crossed the lot with bags and coffee cups. Doing the right thing had not created the mother I needed. It had only stopped me from offering Lucy to the mother I had. No relative received a call asking whether I had been too harsh. For the first time, grief did not require their permission. Lila checked in that evening only to confirm that I was home. A week later, she sent a final update. Her professional review had required her to accept responsibility for signing the altered reports. She was completing remedial training before applying for another childcare position. "I am not asking you to speak for me," she wrote. "I need my next employer to see the whole record, including what I did wrong." My response thanked her for preserving the originals and delivering them through the proper channel. It did not call her a hero, or erase the choices that had helped Bright Steps bury 2 complaints. Monica and Tasha sent a message together after consenting to share the thread. Each thanked me for giving their records a place where they could be tested. Monica planned to pursue a separate complaint. Tasha had not decided. Neither asked me what she should do. That mattered. The case had never needed another chorus repeating one approved answer. The paper folder went into the locked drawer with a calendar reminder for the next public compliance review. No more evenings were spent searching for additional mistakes or watching the center's parent page for signs of collapse. Vanessa's ruin could not become the organizing principle of our home. When Lucy saw the cleared dining table, she spread her math homework across it. "Can we make our own Christmas dinner next year?" she asked. "Absolutely. Even if it's only us?" "Especially if it's us." The months that followed were ordinary enough to feel unfamiliar. My employer's access audit found no use of company systems, records, or authority. The child care restriction was removed from my assignments, and overtime became available again. I paid the delayed summer program deposit without celebration. It was restored income, not a miracle. Lucy began eating at a school table again. The first evidence came when she complained that her friend had traded half a cookie for 3 baby carrots. "Was that a good trade?" I asked. "For her," Lucy said. "I like carrots." She spoke with her mouth full, then froze and glanced at me. "Finished chewing," I said. "That is all." Her shoulders loosened. Messages still arrived through cousins for a while. Dad was devastated. Mom was trying. Vanessa had suffered enough. Each one was saved without response until the attempts stopped. Time passing did not transform pressure into accountability. On Lucy's birthday, a postcard arrived with balloons printed across the front. The message contained one sentence in Mom's handwriting and Dad's name beneath it. "We miss our granddaughter." No mention of the slaps, no mention of the apology they had demanded from her, no acknowledgement of the accounts they had coordinated. I told Lucy a card had arrived and asked whether she wanted to read it, save it unopened, or send it back. "Can I put it in my drawer?" she asked. "Yes." "Do I have to decide today?" "No." The postcard disappeared beneath her sticker book. I did not display it as proof that her grandparents loved her, and I did not destroy it to prove they did not. The choice belonged to the person whose name was on the envelope. In December, we wrote our menu on the back of a grocery receipt. Lucy chose macaroni and cheese, green beans, dinner rolls, and chocolate pie. Her pencil stopped over the last line. "Shrimp," she said. "I want to like it again." On Christmas afternoon, butter warmed in a skillet, while Lucy arranged 2 mismatched plates on our small kitchen table. There were 3 chairs in the apartment. I brought in the last one and left it beside the wall without assigning anyone a place. Lucy dragged it across the floor and positioned it where she could see the window lights. Then she moved my chair beside hers. "Here," she said. "So we both get the good view." The meal would never appear in a holiday catalog. One roll leaned against the green beans. The pie crust had cracked near the edge. Our shrimp came from a frozen bag and curled unevenly in the pan. Lucy served herself too. Her fingers paused above the bowl. For a moment, Christmas returned to her face, the crowded table, Vanessa's hand, the adults who kept eating. Would you like another? I asked. Not, did you ask? Not, haven't you had enough? Not, do you remember what happened last time? Lucy took a third shrimp and placed it on her plate. One kid in my class says our hamster is escaping because he hates math, she said. But I think somebody keeps forgetting to close the cage. Evidence supports your theory. She laughed and began telling me how she would test it after winter break. My phone remained in the kitchen drawer, the Christmas group archived and out of sight. No reaction from Vanessa, Dad, or Mom was needed to complete the evening. Their anger had once decided where we sat, what we ate, and whether we belonged. It no longer crossed our threshold. Lucy chose her chair. She chose her food. She reached for another roll without looking at my face first. At my table, no child had to earn the right to eat.